Hey everybody, AJ McWhorter here, your tournament director for the Hobie BOS Open Series, anchored by PowerPole, and this is the 2021 Tournament of Champions. We are here in Eufaula, Alabama, Lake Eufaula, and we just wrapped up day one of this 3-day tournament. Tensions were high this morning. It was an exciting day. Our anglers lit up the TourneyX leaderboard, but there are still 2 more days of competition to figure out who goes home with that $35,000 check right behind me. And there's a lot more at stake this weekend, and we'll be talking about it through the rest of the weekend. But we've got a little bit of a treat for you tonight. I'm going to run through some, housekeeping things for our anglers that are watching and kind of get everybody prepared for their next day of competition. But we're also going to bring in our day one leader, Matthew Brannon, who fished one event with us this year, won the lacrosse tournament in Wisconsin. And then we're also going to bring in Drew Gregory, who, as you guys know, couldn't be here with us this weekend, but has had a tremendous season this year on the Bass Open Series, was actually sitting in second in our Far Wide Angler of the Year race coming into this event, and is our reigning Angler of the Year from a tremendous season last year. So really happy to still have Drew part of this event, and he's done some of the dirty work for me today. He's interviewed some anglers, and we're just going to have a little chat here in a little bit with those guys. But before we get into that, we had over 278 fish submitted to TourneyX. We had 33 limits, and every angler in the event caught fish. We had 5 anglers over 83 inches, 10 anglers after that over 75 inches, and then another 12 anglers after that over 70 inches. So it is definitely tight in our top 30, and we're going to start to see some separation in that as conditions start to change through the weekend, and anglers either run out of fish or find new fish, or just whatever those conditions are begin to change, and they adjust and make it happen. As we talked about the weather, it rained last night. It kind of pushed a front through the area, but today was spectacular. It was warm this morning. It was sunny. There was some light wind in the afternoon. It kind of helped a little bit of the bite. It's going to dip down into the mid 40s tonight. Tomorrow's going to be another nicer day. Not as nice as today, but then there is a freeze warning for this area on Sunday, and it's supposed to dip down to 30 degrees Sunday morning going into the final day of competition. So things are going to change all weekend, and we're going to be here to keep you updated on those things. Today, our anglers did a great job. There was very few issues today. I think there was only 2 cracked mouths that we had to communicate with anglers on out of that many fish. That's great. I do want to remind our anglers, and for those folks fishing events, this is a great reminder for you as well. You've got to be aware of the sun on your identifiers, even if it's an attorney tag or the other products that are out there to hold your tags. Once that sun gets up, especially in the middle of the day, you obviously are looking at a bunch of things when you're taking a picture of your fish, but you need to make sure in your picture that your identifier is visible, at least for the tournament director to see what they need to see. Now, every ID is different. Every tournament structure is different. I'm looking for what I have to see to verify that that particular ID is the one that I passed out the night before. So tomorrow, when our anglers are writing on their day 2 ID, obviously I'm going to be able to tell that it's the only white ID of this event, but I have to be able to see the code that's written on the ID. So make sure that you write it in other places on the ID, and that when you take a picture of your fish, that when you're looking to make sure your mouth's shut and your tail's flat and you're not covering the eye or finger up the gill plate, all of those things, go ahead and look at your ID to also make sure that your ID isn't drowned out by the sun, and make sure that your ID is not covering the next number on your catch board so that we can give it the proper score. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know the ID for tomorrow. It is 35K. 35K. So go ahead and write that on your ID tomorrow. That has to be in your pictures for day 2. I will be sending the anglers out an email. It will get posted on Tourney X. It will be available in all the places you're used to finding your identifier. But just a fresh reminder, what everybody's fishing for is going to be on your day 2 ID tomorrow. So another quick reminder, our anglers will be fishing the same times tomorrow. They can launch at 5:30. They will be on the water at 6 for first cast. They can fish until 2 p.m. When fishing is over at 2 p.m., the anglers, by our rules, are required to head back to their launch site. They are not allowed to cast, scan, look for new areas, do any sort of scouting. They need to head back to the ramp. It is, we don't have a time frame on how long it's to take you to get back to the ramp. Obviously, you can get very far away and conditions can change, but you are essentially not able to be practicing for your next day after the tournament ends. Then around 4:30, we'll be back here at the tournament headquarters at Lake Point State Park, and we will check anglers in from 4:30 to 5. We will have our dinner for the anglers. I believe we've got barbecue on the menu tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. And 6 o'clock Central, we will go live. We will have some anglers up talking live. We'll be in here. It will be kind of like an award ceremony, except it is just the day before the final award ceremony. So we'll see who the leader is for day 2. We will have a Dakota Lithium's power moves for the biggest jump from day 1 to day 2. And we will, talk to our anglers and get a feel for that. Tonight, we're going to talk to Matthew Brandon, the day 1 leader, and Drew Gregory right after this break.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us.
But none of them knew us.
None of them were us.
Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
AFCO.
AFCO. AFCO.
Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
Hey guys, welcome into the show. Drew is in Ohio and Matthew is around the corner from me. Guys, how's it going?
Going good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, Matthew, I'm gonna start with you, man. I mean, you've got the day 1 under your belt. You feeling any pressure sitting in that top spot?
Absolutely. I would much rather not be in first place after day 1. Don't like that target on the back.
Well, I'd say there's quite a few fellas that'll trade places with you going into tomorrow. But we'll see how that shakes out tomorrow. Matthew, tell us a little bit about what you found throughout the week in practice and how that correlated to today on the water.
I got here, I guess, last Friday, so I've been here for the entirety of the pre-fishing time. Last weekend, we had weather similar to what we're going to have this weekend, and the bite was a grind. I've fished everywhere from the dam to Florence. I think I've been to 8 or 9 different launches. I've caught fish at all of them, but nothing exceptional. Before yesterday, my biggest fish of the week was only 17 3/4. It was lots of 15s and 16s, and it was just running bank. I mean, like you'd fish a mile between bites down a bank. So as the weather progressed during the week, it got warmer. The bite got more steady, but still no size. I just never did find anything of any size. So this morning when I launched with quite a few other anglers this morning. And when we launched, I was talking to a few of them, and I told them flat out, I said, I'm fishing for 70 to 75 inches. Anything more than that is just going to be luck of the day. And thankfully it worked out for me today. And I found 2 good bites, the 19 and a 19 1/4. So, and that was enough to separate me from the bulk of the field, which was going to be in that same range that I was expecting, the 70 to 75 inches.
Yeah, we talked about that when we were live a little bit earlier today. It was kind of who was going to catch those kickers and how much were they going to kick. There was quite a few anglers that had a 20 and a 19, or one angler that had a 22.5. Shout out to Dusty, who has our Bassin Big Bass, caught that 22.5 just tank this morning. But when you start kind of looking through, our top 5, just about everybody except for Jay, who's in fifth, has, a fish over 19 inches in their 5-fish limit. And so I think that's going to be an important thing as it kind of plays out this week. Obviously, you got to remain consistent and continue to put up those numbers. But, being able to find one of those big fish or two like you were today is kind of the difference of, being in kind of the middle of the pack or, being able to hold down that top spot.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, what do you got for Matthew?
Well, do you remember, Matthew, where because you won, if you guys remember, you won in lacrosse.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what position you were in after day one at that event?
I was in third.
So you're right there, laying low, kind of where you were, joking around, like you'd almost rather be in that spot than being hunted down. But, so obviously, I don't know how many inches you were off, but now think about it, it's going to be a challenge, man. I mean, you just said yourself, you were expecting, 75, maybe 80, but now instead of one day to make the jump, you jump from third to first, right? And just with one more day of competition, just 2-day event. Now you got 2 days ahead of you still. So, you definitely have a challenge, ahead of you, but I agree with AJ. I'd much rather be sitting where you are right now. Cause hey man, you're the leader. You got a little bit of room to play with. And even if you have one down day in those 2, you can still have another good day and still win this thing. So great job today, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Appreciate it. And that is true. I could have hoped for something better today. Looking at the forecast, the weather forecast, and anticipating that grind of a bite when it gets cold, it's nice to have that little bit of a lead, that buffer that I can slip up a little bit and still stay somewhere in the competitive leaderboard.
Did you learn anything today during, because obviously you had caught a lot of good fish and you're up there. So did you have a lot of time to explore and practice and something that you can sort of expand on your area, or how'd that go for you?
I did. I've got a pattern figured out. I've been able to reproduce it in a couple different areas of the lake. I don't anticipate it to hold through Sunday. It may work tomorrow. But I do have a couple other spots that have some stuff that should work when it starts to get cold. It's still going to be a grind. It's still going to be holding your breath, waiting on that 5th fish, if you can get a limit once it turns freezing on Sunday.
All right. We got some backup plans. It sounds like that's good, man. And you'll obviously still have a whole nother day tomorrow, assuming you get 5 with somewhat early enough time to still keep learning and exploring more. And the crazy thing is this tournament, the 50 top anglers in the Hobie BOS are here, and everybody, I got to compliment everybody in this field. Don't give up, because you guys are all smart enough to continue to learn as the day goes on, and find something totally new you didn't find in pre-fishing and blow the doors off the next 2 days and change, flip-flop the entire standing. So it's going to be really fun to continue to watch. I've enjoyed it all day long.
I may be swapping launches tomorrow, depending on what happens at first light.
Yeah, and then, this fishery, obviously we saw some in the practice session, but there are some big bass in here. They might be hard to find, but, kayakers have a knack for getting into those places and coaxing those big girls in. And, a 23, a 24-incher can definitely go a long way, not just for our Bass and Magazine Big Bass, that $1,000 check, but also in that separation. That'll definitely really make a big difference as those big fish continue to come in this weekend. Drew had the opportunity to talk to some of the anglers that are right behind you, Matthew. I know that, it's not super separated. It's pretty tight. Drew, you want to give us a little bit of a rundown from the anglers that you spoke to, of all the people that are trying to catch up with Matthew?
Sure, man. I'd love to. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I called AJ, everybody, and said, look, I'm going to be following this thing anyway. It's a good distraction for me with what's going on with us at home, with the family, with my wife and the pregnancy, and, why I couldn't be there. So I was like, hey, man, I'd love to just report on the event, being on the water reporter, but sort of off of the water. And maybe I can call a lot of the anglers and get some intel. And it's just going to hopefully benefit more coverage for the TOC and get more anglers' names out there. Because obviously I'm a big fan of all sides of this, being a tournament director in the past as well. And just so anyway, this is helpful to everybody. So I'm going to actually do something interesting. I'm not calling all the people that are, first, second, third necessarily. I'm just kind of finding some random names out there and people that still are in the hunt, of course, just to get, more coverage for everybody. So The first person I talked to today was Travis von Neumann, and he's in 22nd place with 73 inches, but he's only like 4 3/4 inches out of 10th place. And that's easy to make up 4 3/4 inches in one day. And we've already, set the precedent. We have 2 more days. So just imagine anybody that's around Travis right now in that range, you're 22nd place. Imagine how far you can still move up this thing. But Travis did say he scraped the bottom of the barrel today. He went to a spot. He doesn't think he can go there again tomorrow. He got even fortunate, he said, with the 18 1/4 at the very last minute. It was a late surprise. So, if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't be, quite up here as much. But he's going somewhere new, so he's taking that gamble. Like I said, we got talented anglers who are willing to do that, and they feel like they can go blind somewhere and potentially even, hit a home run. So we'll see what happens with Travis over the next 2 days. And of course, you guys remember he won on Lake Champlain with the, Smalley's Rule hashtag and all that fun we had up there.
He did. Before you jump into the next, I will give Travis a shout out. He, I don't know what his situation was, but I did notice that he wasn't turning fish in from a sit inside kayak today. He was surrounded by this beautiful Hobie lynx. So big shout out to Travis for getting in the Hobie lynx. Whether it's bought or borrowed, we don't care around here. Love to see it.
No, that was definitely cool. And he also contacted me on the water. So he was still on his way back. So, and I will say this to everybody, maybe I can post up my number, or you guys hit me up on Messenger or whatever on social media. If you have an interesting story or something you think would be interesting, then give me a call tomorrow. And if I can chime in again and help out, then just let me know. Maybe I can bring it on if you're doing a live thing. I'm not sure how it's working tomorrow, but anyway, second place, I did talk to Dusty Yacker in second place, 86 and a half. And, obviously he had the big fish of the day, that big 22 and a half incher. And he said, because I was curious, I was like, man, were you expecting this or was this just like a surprise? And he said, no, it was a surprise. So, it'd be interesting to see if he can somehow magically duplicate that tomorrow. But he really feels like the morning is going to be important for him. That's when he got that big bite. And I know you guys have already touched on how important that morning is. And, he honestly said he would have been thrilled with 5 at 12 inches based on the way his pre-fishing went, his practice went. So, he's really stoked to be up there. And he did learn something. The cool thing, Dusty was smart. And I actually, all the anglers I talked to were doing super smart strategic stuff. One of the things that Dusty did that impressed me was that, he once he had a good limit like that, he actually got that kind of on the way to his main best spot. Which best spot is very relative in this tournament. Like I said, I think he caught 5 fish at his best spot during pre-fishing. So it's not, some mega school, right? But on the way to that, he caught his big fish and his good limit. And he said he didn't even touch that area, which he thinks is probably the better of the areas. And he just practiced and learned some new stuff. So he's saving. He's being smart and he's saving fish. So that was interesting. He's really hoping some wind kicks up for the afternoon. That's real important to his game. And, a funny thing he said is he almost went back to the ramp at 10:30, packed up his kayak and went to his Airbnb and slept all day because he's so fatigued already. And it's just day one because he had that good limit. And obviously he didn't upgrade, but I think he's glad he stayed out there and learned a little bit more. So hopefully that can help him in day 2 and 3 because he has no backup plans. So that was Dusty's day. Jim Ware.
Before you jump into Jim,
go ahead.
I've got a little side story to the Dusty side. So
Sure.
Dusty messaged me about that time and was like, hey, man, are my fish coming through? And I was like, yeah, dude, you're leading the tournament. And he was definitely like distraught for a moment. He was like, this is all through Messenger. He's like, man, I'm not a leaderboard guy. Like, I didn't want to know that. Like, he was upset. And I felt really bad because, like everybody's got their things. And I'm like, well, like I'm trying to like, you're going to know that you're the leader at some point. Cause like, that's a thing. People are going to reach out to you and like, you're sitting at the top of this for a few hours. And he let me know that he's staying in a house with Eric Siddiqui and it's really hard to sleep. So I don't know what that means, but that's what he said. So, so hopefully Dusty is getting some rest and Eric will let everybody else in the house rest a little bit tonight as well.
Dude, I stayed at a house with Dusty at the NC. So, it's an interesting time. It's one of the best times I've ever had. So I know that house is a wild, fun group of guys. So I wish I could be there for that. Let's see. Moving on. I did talk to Jim Ware. He has 78 inches and he's in 8th place. So right there. Now, here's what's interesting about Jim. Here's what's different that Jim has going on than I believe anybody else I talked to. Jim's fish, he's considering them a school of fish. So they're, as a school happens, sometimes they leave and sometimes they'll stick around. And anyway, he was concerned they were going to be gone, and he almost left because he just couldn't get them to fire. But around 8 something, he said that he got a bite and then he ended up catching, I believe, maybe 7 out of that school. But, they're smaller fish. You can see he's not catching giants, but he's at 8th place. And you do that, you have an 8th place finish, 2 more days. There's no telling if you might end up in 1st place with that. So, and his is a school. It's not like he's catching resident fish off single pieces of structure that have single fish on them. It's a school. So that was interesting. If they stick around, he's concerned that, maybe there's not 3 days worth of fish in that school. Maybe this cold front, Saturday night affects that school and they're not there. That's always the gamble, with schooling fish. They could just, vacate and then you're stuck with nothing. So we'll see what happens to Jim. But let's see, he thought he had a kicker because he did go searching for a bigger fish and he ended up catching a 6-pound catfish on a spinner bait. So that kind of deflated him a little bit. But I think that's about it. He was just concerned that his school might leave and they might not hold up. So that's Jim Ware. Any other comments about Jim's day?
No, it was always fun watching Jim compete. Jim had a really good tournament down on flooded Sam Rayburn with us this June and was one of our automatic qualifiers to get into this event. I know he wished he'd been able to fish more of these events this season, but when you make it happen in the few that you do get in, it's always fun to see how that plays out. And Jim's just a great guy and good character, and happy to have him here. I got to talk to Jay Wallen a little bit. Our camera was able to cover him, and Jay's sitting there, got 5+1. But if you look at the times, he had 2 fish that kind of came in, I think, in the last 20 minutes. So he stayed grinding, but he actually had a bunch of fish come off today. So definitely not a clean day for Jay, but he was on him. You kind of saw him with Steve Fields earlier this morning, and he pretty much predicted the way that his day was going to go. He knew he was around fish. He was able to, hook a bunch, and he was able to put enough of the right ones in the boat. And he's sitting in a really strong spot right now on day 1. Now, I'm not going to dive too much into the Angler of the Year situation because there's a lot that can happen in a couple days. But right now, the folks that you want to watch in the Angler of the Year race, Jay Wallen is at the top of that list, but right behind him is Jordan Marshall in the 4th spot right now. I'm pretty sure if the event ended right now that Jay would win with 0.4 of a point lead on Jordan. Then you've got Cody Milton, who would be just a few points back as well. So, like I said, we're not going to speculate too much, but I know those 10 to 12 folks are going to be thinking and scheming and figuring out who they need to be ahead of and how many spots. And that'll be a little bit more clear tomorrow as these anglers are filling out their limits within 10 fish as opposed to 5. We'll see who's where people land, even if they don't have limits. There's going to be people that don't have limits potentially that cash checks. There's going to be people that don't have limits that potentially win 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Angler of the Year. There's going to be some interesting things happen, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that. You got one more interview, Drew, or we want to dump in?
Yeah, and I do. I actually talked to Jordan, and real quick, I did talk to Jay too, and I he seems confident. He's caught every day pre-fish, and he's caught 5, and I think 5 fish a day at this tournament. I've always predicted since the very beginning will get you a top 10 finish. You just can get 5 a day. So I was actually impressed that we had 32, 33 limits, something like that. So congrats to all you guys. That was very impressive. I didn't expect that. So good job. And Jay is, he's confident and he's caught 5 fish a day. So I think if he continues on, watch out, man. He could be taking the AY, but a lot of shakeup. I was following that too, AJ, and me not being there and some off days from some anglers and some other stuff happening. It was crazy. I mean, this is a real interesting event to follow for this AOI race. So I'll be paying attention to that. Last one, Jordan Marshall, he's in 4th with 84 1/4 inches. And the 19.5 he caught was kind of a surprise, his first fish. And he was kind of fishing. Here's what I was really impressed by Jordan. And I've done this before. I know other anglers have too. When you have a pre-fishing that's sort of like, meh, you can't win at any of your spots. You're like, I'm not like fired up on any of those spots, but I know I could go there and catch limit and just kind of be in the mix. He's not here to be in the mix, man. He's here to win. So he went to a whole new area today, and that was really cool. And that shows the confidence he's having as an angler to be able to do that. That was really cool because he knows he can always fall back on those other spots. He can take out and move to another location and still probably get that limit, worst case scenario. So he went and did that, and that was really cool. 75% probably of his fish were in new water today, and he left at 10 o'clock to go find more new stuff. So look out for that tomorrow. And again, he's catching localized fish on single pieces of structure and things like that, not a school. But let's see. He just feels like it's going to be really tough, for everybody to get 5 for all 3 days. And his hot take, was that he feels like only 4 will limit out all 3 days. And I said 10, and his housemates from, representing East Tennessee, Eric Thomason and Matt Millard, they kind of were thinking more like I was, around 10. But we'll see, Jordan. That's a hot take that only 4 are going to get a limit all 3 days. I think I guess time will tell. But obviously he's hoping he'll be one of those 4.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on that, Matthew? I mean, you obviously have spent just as much time on the water, if not more, than anybody else out here this week. And, you know what the weather pattern is. None of us know how it's going to affect the fish specifically on Sunday. But let's do it. Over, under 10. Do you think over 10 people will catch a limit, or under 10 people will catch a limit all 3 days?
I'm going to say under. There was about a dozen of us that went to dinner the night before the tournament, and I think 10 was the number that was brought up at the table for all 3 days to be able to get a limit. It's going to be that big of a grind, I think, come Sunday, that the numbers are going to fall off. Those limits are just not going to come.
And that's the other thing, is there's going to be people with 3 and 4 fish that have some decent fish that are going to be larger than a 5 fish limit. That definitely can play out. This is a game of inches, so it doesn't necessarily always matter. You're just looking for the longest cumulative length total. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it shapes out. So before we get off of here tonight, and I do just want to remind everybody that's watching Fishing for 35K. 35K goes on the day 2 identifier. We will send an email out. We will put it on the group page and on Tourney X. So just all the normal ways. I prefer a dark Sharpie. You can write that anywhere you want. I just have to see 35K on that or one of your backup IDs tomorrow for any of your fish to count. But obviously I want to talk about a situation today. One of our anglers, one of our top anglers in our Angler of the Year series, a winner of one of our events this year, Russ Snyder's had a really, strong total on the water today. He was up in the top 5 for most of the day. As the day ended, I'm sure you guys saw that he dropped down to 1 fish and now currently doesn't have any fish in his day 1 total. I want to let people know what happened today. So Russ reached out to me shortly after the event was over, and he was kind of coming out of an area that he had paddled his kayak into, and an angler on the water, not in our tournament, but somebody else, was like, "Hey man, I didn't know if you saw those signs over there." And there's like these 2 really large signs that are like in the front of this bay for boats that would be coming in. Russ was paddling his kayak along the bank from where he launched. He actually sent me a video to kind of show me the situation and explained it to me, took a picture of the sign, told me everything that happened, and said, "Man, I wanted to let you know that I was fishing in this area and I learned that it was off limits based on this sign that I didn't see. And I wanted to let you know as soon as possible." So we had our BOS board. We spoke on it. We ruled all of his fish for day 1 ineligible, no matter where they were caught. We did evaluate where all those fish were caught, but all of his fish were ruled ineligible. And I did want to address the idea of Russ, the things people saying, "Oh, he cheated," or anything like that. In my opinion, cheating is deliberately taking advantage of the tournament director or the anglers that you're competing against. If you're the kind of person to call the tournament director and tell them that you made an infraction at any level of competition, you are not trying to cheat the tournament. You're not trying to cheat the director, and you're not trying to cheat your fellow competitors. What Russ did to me was the honest and admirable way to handle a situation that literally took him out of potentially winning $35,000 in this event and an Angler of the Year title that means so much to somebody. He put himself in that position. He acknowledged it. He made the toughest call to make, and he did that. And we also had to make a tough call in disqualifying his fish for that day. It's my understanding Russ plans to still fish and hopefully just try to catch a big bass and see what he can do the rest of the weekend. And, we looked at other events with similar situations and saw that is, a normal protocol. This is the first time something like that happened in our event, and everybody in the BOS director group was in agreement that the punishment for this was for that day. And, Russ is definitely allowed to fish the rest of the event and still go out there and compete and show us what he's got and see what he can do. So I wanted to kind of let everybody know from a competitor standpoint, Drew, I mean, that's a tough one.
It's really hard. And honestly, if you're a fan of Russ Snyder's or which I am, or a sponsor of his, I gotta say, man, it's something like this. Actually, I'd be more proud to be a fan of him or be a partner with him in any way, because I think you can learn more through something like this than you could have win. Being the grand champion, it shows a little bit more about someone's integrity and their character. And it stings so hard for him right now, I know, because he's one of the anglers I also called and talked to. But something like this, back at the NC, my motor blew up. I was a mile and a half away, 15 minutes into the tournament, motor blows up. Dude, nothing hurts worse as a competitor to know that where the fish are. I mean, I was in 7th place at that event, and leading the AOI, standing. After, I had all these dreams of winning the AOI on that side and also on the Hobie side, right? And all of a sudden, something out of my control, so that's what probably stings is the hardest for him right now, knowing that he, knew where some fish are, because here's what people may not know. He caught other fish after that were very similar in size, but he didn't need them. So he didn't take pictures of them. And that, obviously it still may have all been disqualified anyway, but he caught other fish. So he knows, he had a bag to be right there. And that's just the hardest part. Things in this, sport, there are certain things that are sometimes out of your control, or they're accidents like this that happen. And those are the hardest ones. I can stomach if I just can't find the fish and I spend 3 days pre-fishing, I just get beat by everybody else and I can't find them. I can handle that a little bit easier than I can handle something like this out of my control. So, hey, my thoughts are with him. He's one of the, like you said, one of the top guys in our sport, always has been. And everyone knows, his character. And I just reiterate, great job, Russ. And I'll say to you what Matt Ball said to me when I talked to Matt Ball at the end of that, at the event at the NC, when I had a rough time there. He said, man, you know what, though? If you look back at your entire year, Drew, I mean, pretty much everyone would kill to have your season. And Russ, that's the same thing to you, man. If you look back at the whole thing as a total, 2022, 2021, I guess, everyone would kill to have that season, man. So be proud of what you've accomplished.
Yeah, and I mean, in my role as a director, my job isn't to speculate scenarios. My job is to take what I can see, what I know, what's available to me, and make the best judgment that I possibly can. I do the best I can in that scenario. I always try to work with the anglers and make sure the angler experience, not just for the angler in question, but the anglers in the event is all taken into consideration. So appreciate everybody kind of understanding that situation, and respect Russ for how he handled that. We'll go on tomorrow. We'll go. He's the only one that didn't catch show a fish today. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the whole 50 angler field will be able to do tomorrow. I did also want to give a shout out. Very rarely does anybody have more dollars in checks behind them than Drew Gregory, but I was able to make that happen tonight. So Drew's got an impressive wall. We've got a very impressive wall behind us this week, but I don't get to claim any of those.
Yeah, this is a little egregious, I have to admit. But anyway, hopefully, it's a little credibility, hopefully. But hey, I will shout out to the last thing I'll say is shout out to Christine Fisher and Jackson Orr in 11th and 12th place. We have 2 more days left, and they're right there in similar places, pretty much back to back in the AOY standings. So dark horses, watch out.
Matthew, anything? Oh, Matthew left us. But Matthew, he's going to get some sleep, get out of here. He's got a long day tomorrow.
He didn't like that Jackson and Christine coming up on him in the next 2 days to take his title here. So I'm out.
Drew, I appreciate you taking the time with us to be on here tonight. And we miss you down here and hope everything is going as good as possible up in Ohio. We look forward. Hopefully we'll be able to figure out how to talk to you again. I know the scenario is going to be a little different for the next couple nights, but we'll definitely get some Drew time in a little bit later this weekend. Steve, thanks for running everything today behind the scenes. We loved your lives on the water. Wear your bibs tomorrow. And everybody, thank you for all the support, for following this series, for following the lives, for sharing our angler updates, and doing all you can to support and promote this sport. Appreciate you guys. We'll be bringing you day 2 from Lake Eufaula, Alabama tomorrow.